Max 21D performs remote viewing, deactivating chips and codes or programming, raising the vibrations and healing this great planet. We are co-creating a better reality. You're listening to Wolf Spirit Radio.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being on the Max Till Show. We're live all over the planet Earth, of course, the only planet that we all live in. Anyway, I just want to say a few words. This show is sponsored by max21d.com. That's my website. Also want to say this is a listener-supported station. Please donate. This is Wolf Spirit Radio from Scotland and here in the United States and worldwide. I just want to say thank you for being here. I want to thank the people in the chat room, also the people that are listening all over the world, from the UK, Eastern Europe, and the Middle East, and Asia, and Australia, my good friends in the Aussie land, and elsewhere, South America and the United States and Canada. I didn't mention China. I don't want to mention China. Anyway, what I wanted to say today, that there's been some rumors. It actually is not a rumor. I put it on Facebook. If you're in my friends list, there was a message sent that came out of the White House that to be prepared this month, September, that the electric's going to go up for 2 weeks and have enough food for 2 weeks. And a friend of mine sent me that this morning, so I finally found it and put it on Facebook just a little while ago. But I just wanted to say that we just got to hang on there and don't let these bozos on the cabal team to get in our nerves and trying to make us go crazy and go into fear. Remember, you stay in the word love, and fear cannot penetrate that at all, period. Okay? My co-host tonight is Jennifer Martin, my wife, Nicole. I have Little Pony here. She's actually my bodyguard tonight here. And Vanessa, my moderator. And Russ, my producer. Thank you, Russ. You always do a great job for me every Wednesday. And I want to apologize for last week. I wasn't feeling very well, and I was tired, and I didn't have the chance to do this show. But at least one of my pre-recorded recording was put out there, so I heard it was pretty good. But anyway, I want to thank you for everything here. And now I'm bringing in my guest. His name is Paul. How do you pronounce your last name?
Pauer.
Pauer. Okay. It's spelled different, and it is very different than the American language. Powers. It's spelled, but this is the way it's P-A-L. His first name. They call it Paul, and then you got his last name P-A-U-E-R, like Powers. Okay. So I want to welcome you to the show, and you go ahead and say something about yourself, and let's go into detail about what's going on with the water all over the planet, which we have been deceived so many times and told that what's not true about it. So I always try to bring important people to the show, especially people that are professionals and are involved in many things around the planet. And Paul has been he's been doing a lot of studies and researching. He's done a great job for humanity. I want him to know that, and I want to thank you for being on the show, Paul. Go ahead and continue.
Well, listen, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to actually address the issue of water and hope to further the understanding of what water is and what it is all of, what it is not. Uh, and above all, my institute, the Primary Water Institute, uh, it teaches mostly, but in doing so, it drills water wells all over the world. Just still, it's a budding organization. We've been at it now. I have been at it personally for the last 50 plus years. So we make locations, drill for water, and try to get water in places where it's not supposed to be, well, where it's really supposed to be. And I always, and ironically, we like to have water in places where we always would like to have water somewhere else. You know, we either have too much of it one place right now. There are floodings all over the world, terrible, terrible hurricanes, etc. And other places are like the West Coast out here, as you know, we are bone dry. We're having fires for the last 6 to 9 years now. We are going through a major drought, and we do have water. However, it's beneath our feet, and we will have to drill for it. And in places where there is no subsidence, but I'm not even sure how to start this discussion, frankly, Max. But water is, but it's not a difficult problem. It's not a confusing matter. Water is, after all, everybody knows from school. I think there isn't a school kid, one here or in Europe or anywhere in the world, that has attended the first 6 to 8 grade that doesn't know that water is 2 parts hydrogen atom and 1 oxygen atom. The question has always remained, and should be asked, is how come it is liquid? How could such a thing be liquid? I mean, there is proof for it that now that we take hydrogen and burn it as a fuel in our cars, and the exhaust drips out water. So there it is, folks. The secret is solved. When these two unlike gases, hydrogen, which is pure energy, and the other, oxygen, which you have to have in order to have combustion, come together, they make for water. So, you know, you've got to ponder that. You get to think about it. And basically, these kids should think about it too, because you need a new appreciation and a much better understanding of what water is all about, because that is life, you know. That is the very basis of life. Without water, light, and air, we have no life anywhere. And we have to have water, the kind that we people on the dry or part of the planet can actually use for ourselves to sustain us and grow food. We got plenty of water in the ocean that is saline, and there are other beings that use that water. So we are in some kind of balance here, but in the meantime, there is some strange events. We have some problems with the weather, and now they are really, really extreme. And I am not even speculating how come or why, but it is a fact that there are some strange things going on. Now we are into too long. This drought is, I have been in the United States since 1957. I have never, and mostly on the West Coast. And I shouldn't say West Coast, the Western states. And I have never seen such a thing as what is coming down now. It is a drought of a major, major magnitude. I cannot overemphasize it, but water is it turning into politics in here.
Paul, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Tell us about primary water and how does it differ between, you know, regular water? Why is it primary? Why do you call it that?
Well, Jennifer, when we talk about water, again, going back to the concept, first of all, you have to surround yourself with the concept that it is 2 parts hydrogen and 1 oxygen. Okay? That is, if you break it down to its elemental to the basics. That is what water is. And how did it get that way? All water had to originate in the same place. The thing is that originally, when the planet, well, first of all, we are part of the solar system. I mean that's not a new phenomenon. Everybody understands that, even kids, because they look to the sun and say, oh yeah, well, you know, we came from there. We broke off as a molten piece of matter that remained in orbit around the sun, and then it cooled off. I think we all agree with that. Our problem is not quite understanding where this water came from. Big debate about where the water came from. But you know, it is magic, to be sure. How can you bring two unlike elements together? I mean, two gases, and you're talking about a molten piece of matter and going through such a transformation that it is alchemy. This is where the joke is on, is we got the science, we do things, but don't even understand the water. It's amazing.
Are there places
My internet, by the way,
on the earth where we can find primary water? Is it everywhere or just certain places?
almost any place, almost anywhere, because when this planet started cooling off, it, like anything else that was hot, when it cools off, when something cools off fairly fast or even otherwise, it will develop cracks. You know, all matter that cools off, any solid matter. Well, in this case, wasn't so solid. It was a liquid magma, but it started cooling to become solidified, but then it started cracking. And those fractures, those cracks were the first, basically what they represent today are major faulted structures throughout this planet. And once it started cooling off this planet itself from magma, then these fractures developed. These fractures that went all the way to the very core of it. And then this transformation, this magic that really the creator, I mean, there's no other explanation for it, and we don't have to totally, I wasn't in the laboratory, but we are all part of this planet, you know. We came from it, ashes to ashes, you know, and the rest of this stuff. And we're all gonna go back to it, like it or not. So maybe we ought to understand it a little bit better.
Yeah,
Anyhow,
your internet is not too bad. It's okay. We just had a question regarding primary. Is primary water the same as structured water, or what?
no. Primary water is the very first water. The word primary is normally used by the scientists to denote something that is first. Primal, primary, the very first. It does, I believe, come from the Latin, but at any rate, primary water was the very first manifestation of these two gases joining hands, basically, down below, out of magma. That is such a difficult thing for the poor human mind to surround. But we don't have to really understand why the creator did that, but he did, or she, it did it. In Hungarian, it's easier because we are talking about third person. And so here we have this magic, this alchemy, as it were, that transformed, that totally changed out of magma. First become the gases, the two gases of hydrogen and oxygen. Then basically these gases united to make water vapor. And as they were more and more vapors made, these vapors had to leave where they were made. In other words, down below, from the magmatic sources. So they made our atmosphere. Our atmosphere was first very vaporous, hot gases, vapor gases that were hydrogen and oxygen. And along with that, the rest of the other gases, etc., were introduced. So the very beginning of water as we know it, period, this liquid, doesn't, what do you do with it afterwards, whether you take it away, try to break it down, try to structure it, or whatever, is definitely a secondary occurrence. So when the water entered the atmosphere, it become water now that made our atmosphere. We didn't have any atmosphere. We just had this molten mass floating around. So out of this, there was an atmosphere formed. And this is not even a theory. I mean, obviously the Martians didn't come and threw ice cubes at us to give us all this water to make us the water planet. Did they? If they did, boy, they better give a real good explanation where they got their ice to melt on us. But anyway, it's a sick joke, but it's nonetheless, I'm trying to have some levity about this mystery, because it can remain a mystery. We just have to appreciate the fact that additional volumes of water have been added to this planet from the time it started cooling off. And these additional volumes of gases at first entered to make the atmosphere, and then they proceed to continue to be made. They never stopped. As long as this planet is alive and as long as you see the earthquakes and volcanoes blow, this planet says, hey, we are alive. The creation is an ongoing event. And we are just part of it. And I find that comfortable enough. Maybe I don't have to. But again, when you look at the continents, all of a sudden this planet suddenly develops its oceans. And where did the oceans come from? Well, obviously, it came from the magma. And when it split, these splits, initially the solid matter split into parts, and not suddenly, but over the many hundreds of millions of years, and everybody can just guess at it, suddenly these continents started to drift apart. Why did they drift? Well, that follows that something was pushing them apart, and that was that new matter, which was primary water that is being added even now all the time to this planet has grown in size, in volume, because gases, they don't take up any space. But water, the minute this phenomenon occurs, these gases unite to make this solid matter, which is now solid. And water is the only thing that I know that you cannot compress. You cannot compress. You can compress even other solid material, but not water. Water is non-compressible. And it is the ultimate solvent. It will dissolve anything and everything over the period of time. Because you see, with this ultimate move of primary water came in all of our solids, all of our metals, and all of our other minerals. So the process is really mind-boggling, but we should really just confine ourselves to try to understand where you can find these structures, these faults. Well, like anything else, it cracks just like the human body. You have this water is distributed and pushed throughout the whole system to a lesser degree in places where the veins are not pronounced. In other places, like for example, even in the Sahara, you have the oases in places where it doesn't rain there, so that water never been in the sky or in the atmosphere. That water is just now coming up, and the only reason it shows is because the solid material, because not so much sand is covering it, because some of those sand dunes are many hundreds, if not 1,000 feet thick. Those have been deposited over the long period of time. Now over there, they're sure there's cracks down below, maybe 1,000 feet down, but then that water that is made down below is disseminated. The only time it shows is if the solids are pushed up high enough to where they could actually surface. So it doesn't have so much overburden in which to dissipate this moisture. I don't know if you follow what I'm saying, Jennifer.
I do. I am following. And so are you saying that the earth itself, it makes the primary water, and that
yes, it's making it now.
It's always there, always
it's
available.
Always there.
So if let's say the United States starts drilling, and maybe China and Russia and other countries go, oh, let's all drill for primary water. Will we ever run out of primary water?
No, no, there's no way
No.
you can run out. First of all, we have absolutely no idea by what volume this planet is growing, because even as we speak, in the structures down below in our great oceans and seas, the very faults down below, even now they add hot water and brine. Some of it is briny water, depending on what that water encounters on its way up. What are the adjacent country rock that it's dissolving? Because you see, the hotter the water is, or well, we know that if liquids get hot, like you want to make your coffee sweet, it better be hot, and then you can add sugar, and it will be sweet. So these hot waters are added to our oceans, especially when you can witness it when these volcanoes go off. The first thing comes is a whole lot of steam. Boom, it goes. Well, where did all that steam come from? Well, it had to come out of magma. So, you know, so it's pretty obvious what's happening. And of course, we cannot tell how much water is made down below at the bottom of the oceans, but it's got to be an enormous volume. So we are, as a planet, growing in size, in total volume, because suddenly these gases that were present in magma, now they take up space in the form of water. So yeah, we could at some point in time, the coastal regions could get inundated. How fast or just exactly why and when, I wouldn't even try to speculate. But we could surely pay attention to and think along those lines, and you might even get some answers. You know, the whole idea of trying to educate, and you were an educator, it is really not to brainwash people, but to make them think. If you can make them, education is for the purposes of teaching people or trying to force them to think. One of the scientists that I'm very proud of is St. Georgi, the guy that is the father of the vitamin C. And he, well, the first vitamin that actually was acknowledged to be such a thing as vitamin. And he said something along the same lines. He said, you know, education is what education is about, is try to have kids and people be able to think independently, not you know, this calls for education, this calls for intelligent people.
How did you first learn? Speaking of education, you got educated about primary water. Who taught you?
Well, you know, I must say that it started back in Europe, but my uncle, godfather, was a scientist. His name was the same as mine, and he was responsible for one of the first treatment plants in Budapest, Hungary. Those waters from the city in 1947, right after the war, that was the first city that didn't dump its sewage without treatment into the river. You know, because can you imagine now with adding all the chemicals, industrial chemicals and other stuff, that river would not be fit for anything. But nonetheless, it started in my family. But here in the US, it was my instructor from high school, who was a Bavarian-born mining engineer and scientist in his own right, Stefan Ries, with whom I went on different drills. Basically, you guys know where California City is, at least you, Jennifer, if you're out here in the West Coast. Well, without Steve Ries, there would be no California City. He and a handful of investors got together and got a hold of a whole lot of worthless piece of land just north of the Air Force Base. And Steve said, well, no, here we can get, this is part of the Gorlock system. This is that faulted structure that is an east-west, more or less east-west thrust fault. And that is responsible for the entire water source that is in the Mojave. And there was a lot of water in the Mojave until Mulholland managed to appropriate it for LA. That place was full of little farms, beautiful place. But nonetheless, that water is still there. And one of the most important bottling companies here in California. And I should not to advertise anybody, but balanced. And they originate from the Mojave, and now they, of course, they have other sources. Probably one of the finest on the market, but they are bottling water. But we have other sources. Gosh, we have untold number of sources of water. Some that, like like a spring in Maine, that is bottled. I'm trying to see that I don't violate any of you guys' rules in naming names. But mention in that they don't need, they can bottle right on site without zapping it with any kind of any rays to kill any bacteria, because they do it right there. The water comes out of the ground, and they're able to bottle it right there on site without having to, quote unquote, disinfect it or otherwise change its makeup. It is the way it is, and boy, it is fine water. So but that's just one place. There are literally hundreds. There are in Africa. There are the Amboseli. We did a water well for the Maasai in let's see, that would be, no, it was 2011. Okay, and that water for the Maasai there is one of the finest water, better than most. Let's put it that way. That is the top 5% of the, in quality wise, in Kenya. Yet you're out there in the Serengeti where you just have these occasional rainfalls, well, annual rainfalls, but they fail too sometimes. So you get into a drought period there, not unlike around here. But we drill the water well, their primary source, it is fantastic. I have gone back there last year in my drills for another site for a school, and I went to there. It is. It's still there. What it could use now. The solar is good enough now. We can actually make life a whole lot better for a lot of people, particularly over there. Those Maasai are very, very nice people, and they live off their cattle and nothing. That particular tribe could use a solar system where we could pump. Right now, they still have to stand in line, and nearby villagers have to come with buckets, with 5-gallon buckets, and can you imagine, stand in line, pump. But at least the water is pure and it's not contaminated. So none of those people, their incidents of cholera and dysentery associated with waterborne diseases, and most of them are. That's how they spread. They have now a very low occurrence. So I'm kind of proud of stuff like that. This is basically what makes this world go around and promotes goodwill. And if we can do it, let's do it for them at home there. We don't have to import those people and spread them all over the planet if they can make their own life better at home. Like teach them to fish, teach them to catch their own fish instead of taking them fish to eat. We don't want to make the whole world dependent on anybody. And these people are very intelligent and very, very, how should I say, very decent people. That's just my opinion, but I'm sure you'd agree.
Okay, I have a question for you. Can you take us through the whole process of the whole drilling thing and how you keep the water from being contaminated from the surface?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because one of the things that I probably would have overlooked was an explanation of, not an explanation, but one of the chief virtues of what primary water is. Because it is a water that is made down below. It has not been in the atmosphere, thus it hasn't had a chance to get polluted by anything, because even us people and animals, etc., on the surface. Those waters that come from the sky from rain, as soon as they hit the ground, they start to dissolve all the other matter that are in fact have been on the surface polluted, be it chemicals, be it waste, any kind of human waste, animal waste, and another pollutant too, that which we are faced with nowadays and probably will be the challenge of the future, which is radiation from mistakes, be it accidents or premeditated. But you see, all of our water systems now on the surface, you know, and our reservoirs that are open reservoirs. Can you imagine if there should be an accident, what would happen to a major accident? Certain areas of this planet, basically people wouldn't have enough clean water to drink. Now, with primary water wells, we drill into solid bedrock. In other words, invariably granitic structures that are dense and fractured. And I look for those fractures that extend down below, through which that water is pushed up, and tie into those. And in doing so, you know, let's say we would like a modest small well. You know, you oversize drill the hole to say 8 inches way into bedrock, like say into these granite-like structures. I think that's a very good explanation. Everybody knows granite is hard. And you know, you get a granite, water doesn't go through it very well. Any hard rock. So if you drill into those and then seal, by I mean seal all the adjacent material that could enter that borehole. So your pipe, say, is 6 inches and the original drill hole is 8. You would have a couple of inches of material, place for material to seal that pipe with. That would then be the casing of the well. So you could seal out any kind of contaminants that would trickle in from the surface. Or you would only get the water from down below and nothing else. So even if there was a problem with surface contaminants, you would not contaminate your own well water. I don't know if I'm sufficiently.
You are answering my questions. Tell us about, I looked at your website and I was intrigued by the time that you were asked to go to Israel, and they were building a city and they needed enough water for 100,000 people. Tell us that.
No, I didn't do that. Steve
Oh, you
Reed,
didn't? Oh,
no.
okay.
Oh, I wish I did. I was hoping, gosh, but it didn't matter, because again, there's politics. There are politics involved everywhere. You know, it's amazing. It's amazing, and much of it is not very. I'm not sure that can you hear me? Because I've got problems with this server here.
Yeah, the bandwidth is pretty low and you're breaking up a lot.
You're good. It slows down a little bit, but it catches up. So we still hear you.
Oh, good.
Wait a minute, I gotta say something. I've been monitoring the internet from everybody here, because I have a special software I can do that. And you're being interfered on purpose. Okay. I did pick up an IP address that I analyzed and traced it back. I did a tracer, and it found if the NSA don't want you to be talking, that's why they're interfering with your internet.
Well, listen, let them sit on it. Sooner or later, they'll figure out which way the wind blows. I mean, people have to know this. This is not a state secret. This is what people should be working on.
Exactly.
I mean, you know, it is to our, not only to our interest, but even to our enemies' interest. This is where we can all get together and keep politics out of water all together. Then we wouldn't have to screw around controlling weather. I mean, that should not be done by anyone. I mean, those people are criminals.
Well, I'm so glad I'm able to monitor them when they're monitoring us. So,
you know, no one sponsors you because everyone seems to. I don't know where they get this picture that they have to control everyone.
Well, they ain't going to
The
control
more independent-minded people you have, the more stable democracy you have, and less chance of herding the sheep down the slaughterhouse. You know.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to mute myself, and you guys continue to talk. Is there any questions here? It says the Arctic ice is melting. Will the change of our water levels, and if so, how much? I'm going to repeat that again.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand.
Okay, the question is, hey, Russ, why didn't you tell it? You're the one that wrote it.
Okay, you know, the Antarctic ice is melting through because of the temperatures or the activity underneath there, warming. And they were saying that it could be, in 10 years, it could be pretty much eliminate the ice on the west side. Or what you
but you know, Russ, if you forgive me, have you ever thought about that there may be some volcanic activity underneath there? My God, that's part of the ring of fire. You know, what are you going to do with that? You better, by God, do some heavy duty praying. I don't know what the Maker has in mind, but look, all of a sudden we get a lot of extra volcanic activity going along the ring of fire here. And what's the matter with everybody? Don't they think about that? Hey, listen now. This melting of the ice sure as heck doesn't come from a couple of 100 billion piss ants, you know, because that's about all we are. You know, we do occupy the space, and yes, we do emit carbon. But for God's sakes, every one of these volcanoes that go off down below, you realize the kind of a heat. Look at the Hawaii. Look, you got to be blind not to think about, or not very bright to think that all that magma that is pouring into the waters by Hawaii, that they are not sure as heck aren't cooling the oceans, are they? I really realize it's a rhetorical question, but that's definitely worthy of investigation, unless everybody knows that it's happening already. And nobody wants to talk about it, because there isn't much we can do about it. Perhaps we can, maybe not.
I noticed that there's a lot more volcanic activity. Well, take Hawaii, for example, you know, all this magma coming up and that sort of thing. That's got to change things as far as pressures all around the world. And with that, that's liable to change some flows of different currents we have oceans of water supposedly underneath the earth. And these things are going to probably do some heavy duty shifting in a manner to maybe possibly to create more water in places that haven't existed before. Right?
That's right. That's right.
And to be able to channel that where it needs to be is the forethought we have to come up with as far as what can we do when these opportunities come along.
Yeah, well, you know, if you take a look and be really realistic, all of a sudden we get all this temperature change. Well, you know, this should have been creeping up very, very steadily over the last century, which there hasn't been even a 1 or 2 degree, maybe not even that temperature change. And then really, how dare these people attribute it to New York or something? Or, hey, listen, the Chinese, they're making enough smoke and stink. They figured it out. They're going to have to cut back on that because they can't hold Olympics. I mean, come on. These things have to be worked out locally.
Like cow flatulation or something like that?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. You know, you got to be really a sick human being to worry about. You know, you could be even more gross, but it's just absolutely amazing to think it goes up the coast. And most of the atolls in the Pacific Ocean, you know, those atolls were volcanoes that blew a long time ago and slowly uplifted. They were enormous in size, like the Marshall Islands for one. You know.
Could you repeat that last sentence, please? Again, you broke up
I
there.
went out there to take a look. You could get water on the Marshall Islands.
Okay, I think you froze up there, Paul. If you turn off, I'm gonna say if you turned off your camera there, you might be able to increase your bandwidth, and we could try that a little bit. That way, we won't have that problem.
Okay, where is my camera? Okay, that video is the camera. The video.
Yes, and if it improves, we'll deal with that, and then we'll see if that clears it up.
I turned it off.
Okay, go ahead and talk away now, and hopefully that.
Well, no, I'm just saying that everybody knows that those atolls in the Pacific Ocean, for example, those were humongous volcanoes that went off many hundreds of thousands, some millions of years ago, and slowly uplifted. And they are the ones that were volcanoes. Now, can you imagine at that time how hot that neck of the woods was, and all that heat? And again, that's part of the ring of fire structure there. You know, goes right straight through the places where we have all these quakes. And presently, it's Japan. Well, that's always been Japan and China and that, but you can go ahead and draw. Well, you know, when I refer to the ring of fire, the places that you just go ahead and start down there by Chile and come all the way up through the west coast of the United States. How far extends it? Goes underneath towards the North Pole, then goes over to Alaska and Russia, and then comes right on back on their east coast, all the way down, all the way into the Asiatic and the Haiti and what have you down there, you know, and Japan, and you know that has suddenly become mighty active lately. I mean, you know, I think you could probably not even have to force it and make some correlation with the planet warming, for whatever reason it is. I have no clue, but I do pray that it will slow down enough, and I more than pray, just understand. And then we are trying. I think as human beings said, okay, there's some points in cutting out carbon dioxide, but I don't think it's the carbon dioxide so much as the heat itself. You know, there's an enormous volume of heat that seems to be contributing to why the water is getting warmer. I mean, it is on a large scale. It would not be noticeable, in my opinion, that you could only attribute it to carbon. With carbon we need. I mean, we don't need it in such large volumes as we've been having it in some places. For example, this carbon out here west is killing us. All the plants have died, and then the place is burning. You know, it's amazing. I went from mid upper part of Oregon all the way down, practically. Well, I went past Sacramento and back and forth in my projects, and most of the places is not fit to breathe. And now what is this?
Paul, are you familiar with geoengineeringwatch.org?
Well, I've got to confess to you, Jennifer, that I am not one of these the sky's falling types so much, as it were. You know, you got to look at these things objectively. Otherwise, you'll end up really sticking your head up, you know, dark places. So it's just, you have to have an open mind and examine everything. I mean, look at it. You say, hey, wait a minute, this possibility exists. To what degree? Now, presently, we should have an ability to actually measure. Or are we having some volcanoes go off underneath the North Pole? We could, you know, very easily. And how many volcanoes does it take to melt the North Pole? I don't know, but it's definitely worth pondering. And what are we going to do when that happens? I mean, these are the things, and let's not fool ourselves into stupidity and say, hey, it's caused strictly by the carbon emission. I mean, come on.
Oh.
You know, I mean, this is what, if this civilization doesn't get a hold of itself and get to go straight, this planet will get rid of us. You know, we are not, if we don't understand water and this planet that we occupy a little bit better, you think it's going to put up with, we are the byproduct of this planet. You know, the very, very ability to us to communicate and consider it. And what are we going to do? We're going to use some techniques or technology against each other, and the planet won't go, hey, we're going to do ourselves in, for sure. There will be no exception. And you know what? The planet doesn't care. It'll live on, and then we'll redo this whole thing again. You don't even have to believe in reincarnation.
I know there's other scientists out there that are predicting we've got until maybe 2020. If we don't stop the aerosol spraying and we don't stop all the, you know, manufactured drought and things that are going on to manipulate the weather and change our environment, we're doomed. I mean, really, that's what they're saying.
Let me tell you this, that we do have water, and we can actually drink clean water and see that we don't get sick, and see that we won't fall prey to our stupidities. Right now, it's totally idiotic to have all of our water supplies out of open reservoirs, for God's sakes. I mean, it wouldn't take very much to do this planet in. All of us, we are all of us in the same boat. There's no exception. Not even our enemies. They're in the same boat, so they're going to have to look at it too.
Well,
and then, as long as we are free people here, and people like Max are willing to fight, and we are willing to come out and say, hey, wait a minute, have you thought about this? I think we're okay. Once that's gone, it won't matter whether we all become slaves or what. The planet will eat us alive.
Yeah.
Or we are going to do ourselves in.
It's politics too, and I think it was in 1988 the California legislature considered having primary water wells drilled, and they vetoed it. And I don't know why it was whether it was a financial thing or.
You know, I went with Steve. No, it's control. It's again control. These are now greedy people that would like to, because if they get to say who gets to do what, because if some of these places you don't have water and you can prevent people from getting water, then you can stop them doing anything. So that's it. Or if you could take the water from them. Presently, I'm very disappointed overall that we have not progressed at all. You know, I'm fond of. One of my favorite authors, if not the most favorite, is Mark Twain. You know, that guy was quite something. Too bad I didn't get to live in his time, but he spent a lot of time out west. He came out here as a surveyor, that Mark Twain, and he ended up in Nevada, and he's got a whole bunch of good stuff, really funny stuff. And then later on, San Francisco, and he worked for the San Francisco Chronicle, and then went back east. But anyway, when he came out west, his brother was out here, I believe, a surveyor also, or was a surveyor. Maybe he joined him, but exact. Anyhow, they asked him how life was out west. He says, "What's different about out west in here?" And his sense of humor, I think, one of the finest. He said, "Well, he says, out here, out west, whiskey is for sipping, but water is to fight over." and it hasn't changed any. It's all the states, all of them. And now that with this drought becoming really critical, I don't know. Nobody is thinking about having a backup system, because we don't have a backup system here in California. God forbid if we should have an earthquake and displace the aqueduct, half a dozen places, what the heck is going to happen to all the people down in the valley, from the valley on all the way down to San Diego. You get a couple of 20 million people hanging around there, you know? And that's just one of them.
Remember when the Orville Dam was threatening to cave and everybody was panicking and millions of dollars of agriculture would have been lost?
I watched that, and you know, nobody spent any money for maintenance in here. See, everybody. I mean, some of these monies are spent on stuff that is even bad for a bad dream. But you have to maintain your roads and at least your distribution system. And anyway, that used to be, because I fought, frankly. Steve and I, at least I joined. I carried the flag for Steve. I said, yeah, it makes sense. The state is only thinking a singular distribution system. However wonderful, I think God has been awful good to the Californians here. He hadn't had, you know, imagine that there has been no major quake on the San Andreas to dislocate that structure. And we are pumping from Tehachapi, we are pumping the whole blasted river over the Grapevine to the LA side from the valley. And never mind, nobody's taking care of the dam at Feather River, you know? I mean, if that thing went, Sacramento would have been a world of hurt. That would have been one of the largest disasters in California, not only because of the immediate effect, but that would have deprived the place of water, quite a bit of water. So I don't know. It has to be a backup system, and definitely everybody has to just take a look at the situation in here and say, where else can we get water? Well, where it came from in the first place, right down below. But you see, everybody then says, well, then we have, you pump all this water out of the ground, and then what do you have? You have settlements, you know? In other words, the ground collapses, sure, because water holds it up. I mean, the valley, the valley in here, supposed to be changing elevation depending on how much rain we had, because the groundwater gets recharged, but only down to the bedrock. You see, that water that you pull out of these basins, you have to look at, almost for lack of a better conceptualization, if you look at the California, the Great Valley here, basically the breadbasket of this country. I mean, fruit anyway, and vegetable. Good heavens, there's no such paradise anywhere. You know, it boggles the mind when you see what food and is raised here. But it is in a basin, like a bath, and the bottom part of it is visualized as almost like a bathtub. It's not solid all the way across, but it is like a bathtub. And it has what they call an alluvium, which is made up of sand and gravel and other material that take up the space, all the way down to bedrock, that have been settled, that have been as a result of settlements of decomposed materials of rock and gravel, but from glaciated, from the glaciers that set onward. But so when you start pumping water out of there from anyhow, let's go back to the bathtub. I think it better illustrates it, because if you take a bathtub and fill it with sand and gravel, you know, just sand and gravel, you can add a lot of water to it. You know, now all the way up to the top. Now you start pulling that water out of it, put a straw in there and start sucking the water out. What happens? In the place of water, something has to come in. There's nothing in there. Then the ground collapses. Okay, then you have problem. Then you have displacement, surface displacement. But not when you talk about the mountains, because those mountains are solid. The amount of waters that came out of some of these mountains are such enormous in volume, but they all go into the rivers and then flow down into the ocean. Well, that's the way it's made. So the place where we could get water without causing any surface, and also unpolluted water, is these from primary sources out of these fractures. And basically, at the foot of the Great Sierra Nevada, from Susanville on all the way down to Mexico and into Mexico. That structure is fractured and faulted in many, many places, and you have some very fine water there. We figured one time it would take about 8,000 wells back in the early 60s. It would take 8,000 wells to basically supplant all the water that presently they're using through the aqueduct, good water. Right now we have a distribution system based on the aqueduct, so it wouldn't take too much to drill. I think this country, California, could do it and do it within 2 or 3 years if we set our minds to it. I mean, you know, it's not even like going to the moon. You know, we have the technology now. We have wonderful drilling machines, but there has to be a commitment.
So how can we get that commitment?
Well, obviously, our politicians are sitting on, we give them all the money and they get to go and tell us how they go to work, and they spend it. We're going to have to get people into office who are willing to think and not play politics with water. You know, it breaks your heart when you drive through the valley and some of these farms will get water and vast tracts of lands don't. Now, there you go. Now, if that ain't politics, what is? You know, you decide on who's gonna make hundreds of millions and who doesn't. But now I think the creator is interfering a little bit. I think maybe he'll say, hey, wait a minute, you guys do that, none of you will get any. So that probably is what's going to come up next. You know, we're going to have to be charitable to one another a little bit, or at least generous to ourselves. The bottom line.
Okay.
You're not losing me now anymore?
Not much, very much. No, we're fine. I just want to say that we are going to go into the break ahead of schedule. Russ, go ahead and take, we'll be right back in about 5 minutes. Please stay tuned to our guests. We'll be right back. Go ahead, take it away, Russ.
Welcome to the Captain Max Steel Show. You're listening to Wolf Spirit Radio.
You're out west here.
Thank you very much for staying tuned. We got a lot of important things to cover still yet to come. I just want to get to let you know there are people of sending fear factors to YouTube that the Yellowstone Park volcano is starting to erupt and all this stuff. That's a bunch of crap. I'm gonna tell you why it's a lie. If you go to a YouTube person named Camper Van Kevin, he is right now near Yellowstone Park, and he was in there a couple of days ago. I listened to all his, because he travels the country in an RV, and he gives that story. He was just down at Yellowstone Park, and there's no eruption of any kind. It's a lie. So folks, don't fall into these things. I always find out sooner or later. I get guided to go to different YouTube videos, and when I listen to Camper, V-A-N, V as in Victor, A-N, Kevin, go into today's show, that recording he did today, and a couple of days back, he shows a live video of him going into Yellowstone Park, and nothing is going on there, like they've been telling that that Yellowstone Park is going to explode, all this and all that crap. It's a lie, folks. It's a complete lie. Okay, so don't fall for it. Now, the other thing that we were talking off air, I decided to talk about it again. All these, there's a guy out there named Mike Emery, and he said he got a machine that he can turn off all the volcanoes all over the world. And by the way, he has not done anything like that. Well, he thinks he did it, but anyway, I just want to say that he can't do that in the first place. And another thing is this, that all the volcanoes under the water, the ocean, and everywhere in the world, they're all connected to the Yellowstone Park, and all these volcanoes, all are doing is releasing pressure. The one closest to Yellowstone Park is the one in the Hawaiian Islands. That has been that is the main one that's releasing most of the pressure from the Yellowstone Park. And yes, all the volcanoes are all connected to one another. And yes, the volcano is just like nature. It's like the trees that communicate with other trees. It's just like the birds that can communicate with other birds. It's the same thing. They do communicate. And when they don't want for excuse me. I get too excited when I talk. What's going on in Hawaii has to happen. It's part of nature. Okay, so the release of the volcano in Hawaii is because it's releasing pressure to Yellowstone Park, and there's not anything going on in Yellowstone Park. Not cracks, roads, or highways, or any type of explosion. There is not anything. Just a little smoke from different areas. And Old Faithful is as happy as it can be. Take it away, Paul.
Well, anybody that can match what God has done, and or what, well, anyway, it is kind of dreaming a lot, and I'm not sure why you would want to do that anyway. If you don't have enough things to do, worry about, see if you can control the volcanoes. All I get to say is lots of luck. You know,
absolutely.
You know, that maybe you know, that we are talking about forces in here. This planet is all, we are all together, and all the magma down below are in fact connected so far. They could be separate chambers. Maybe some places the fractures are large enough to permit the escape of this magma. But if anything, over the long period, this planet should cool, because that magma will be spent. It will have changed into water via the hydrogen and oxygen combinations, and it will get, this planet will get larger and cooler, and it will have less volcanoes. But presently, what we're experiencing is a cycle in this planet's life that it has had before. I mean, we are not the only ones here now. We are here now. We are conscious of it, but there were people before us, and will be many of them, and many, hopefully many after us. But we will have to treat this as a wonderment, and with gratitude and goodwill to all, and help one another. That's what I think that's what the planet should be all about. But that's, you know, it makes me just having spent a good part of my life try to understand water and why, and go out there and actually drill water wells in places where there shouldn't be any water. I wondered at first how and why. It took me quite a while to figure out that yes, it is coming, and it is ongoing process. We are having, but not all, you see, again, not all primary water is actually drinkable, as it were. Once you drill it, then you find out exactly what kind of water you have, because you can check out the chemical makeup of any water. Some of them, obviously, that are contain metallic substances. Gold is one of them, and silver and pyrites, iron. Those were all deposited from these primary sources from magma through this interaction of minerals. And many of them, like particularly one of the famous poisons that everybody knows arsenic. Well, arsenic actually is derived from a type of an iron pyrite that is called arsenopyrite. It is a primary ore. It was also brought in with water. So when I drill water wells, I look for the kind of minerals in the process of drilling that will indicate on the surface or in the process of drilling what to expect. So I can in advance say, wait a minute, I don't think we're going to go ahead and drill anymore. We're going to go ahead and seal this structure because we don't want to add arsenic to the environment here. Seal it off. So it's not as simple as all that. You just poke a hole in the ground. In some places in the Great Valley of California here, because of over-fertilization, overuse of pesticides, etc., the water is not fit to drink. So now we have a technology to clean it up, reverse osmosis, etc. Well, it's okay, but what do you get when you take all the minerals? Now you have to take everything out of the water and try to figure out what to put back in there to keep it in balance, because water has to be in balance. It is a solvent. It will dissolve anything eventually. And now you try to recreate something that is good, that is fit to drink. A very dangerous thing to do. First of all, these people also are advertising drinking distilled water. Well, I can tell you what else they distill for. Is for alcoholic beverages, vodka. Vodka you can distill to a point where it's practically pure. And you want to drink it, you might as well drink vodka, just to drink distilled water, because it will leach your system. It will take the nutrients out of it, will leach the calcium and other stuff that your body needs in order to have a proper digestive balance. Because those particles, those mineral particles in water are electrically charged. And they're electrically charged so that your system can actually use the food value in them in the process of digestion. Now, if you don't have those little ions active, you have dead water, and dead water is not good. It may be used for irrigation, because as soon as you spray it on top of the surface, it will immediately start to dissolve and possibly add to that dissolved substance. If the plants could survive on that, that would be, I suppose, acceptable. But again, we are each time we're messing with a new technology, and particularly, this is just as dangerous as the atom, because now they are talking about desalinization on a large scale. Now, what do you suppose is going to happen with all that sludge that is going to be the garbage that is going to be left behind, because we're going to have so much of that is unreal. You cannot take a volume, a percentage of that water will be absolutely pure salt or a saline solution. Well, I think as long as you could redistribute that in the oceans in such a fashion that you put it back and kind of let it mix it up out there and then just kind of dilute it so it's not harmful. But if you dump it back in a concentrated form nearby where you got it from, you could destroy your fisheries, to start with, and other plant life. So each time it is really dangerous. You develop a technology, and everybody's rushing headlong into doing this new technology, only to find out that we got a problem. Now, what are we going to do with the garbage? We're going to have to now find another technology to get rid of the technology that we just fixed, and it can go on and on and on until there's no way we can use the original one either. It's just, and that's basically, I think that the use of atom for energy is fine, but what can we do with the concentrates? As long as we don't know how the heck to get rid of that, I really can't help support the technology, frankly, because what we're going to bury it in the kind of out of sight, out of mind. we got some stuff sitting in concrete coffins out there at the Mugu Trench, for example, among other places. Or we're putting them in salt mines, but they're getting more and more of them. And if something, God forbid, again, accidents, that thing will kill us surely. Now, those are the things that we have to be thinking about, is how to get rid of our garbage. If we get a technology, it leaves a residue.
Paul,
Yes?
I have a question. How can we create the best water to intake? Now, I've been drinking distilled water here for a while here, and
Don't do it.
yeah,
Don't do it, Russ.
Thank you for telling me. I mean, I'm
Don't
listening
do
to
it.
you. I'm here. I hear you loud and clear.
Don't do it.
Okay. All right. Now, how can we create the best drinking water to intake, other than just using basic filters?
No,
Is there some way to treat
Russ,
or
we
is
have,
there-
we have all good water that we, and it varies to some degree. Some are better quality than others. In other words, some are in balance. Roughly, the total dissolved solids, you know, of a given quantity of water. Like, for example, you take about 1 quart, but they call it 1 liter. 1 liter of water, parts per million, they decide exactly how many parts per million of these minerals are desirable for digestion, for example. Well, again, then there are those real finite quantities in almost every drop of primary water or any water that are absolutely necessary in the long run. Or when I say long run, the longer the better, so we don't drop dead at too young of an age. I've already lived a fairly lengthy life, so I don't get scared all that easily anymore. You know, my time, I'm already on borrowed time. But some of these younger people know, you know, and you guys ought to not drink. You guys ought to drink balanced water, about up to 150 parts, between 100 and 150 parts per million. Balanced mineral water is good for you. Calcium, magnesium, definitely top of the line, and the other minerals that are necessary for digestion, because they are all electrically charged. Every one of those particles in there that come from different minerals have a different electrical charge. There's some really fine waters in California. We got plenty of it.
Yeah,
See?
I'm sorry. Are we able to electrically charge our own water?
And well, we could charge it electrically, but the very minerals come that way. In other words, the electrical charge of let's say a calcium atom it has an electric different valence as opposed to an iron, as opposed to magnesium. You know, and so what's the level of what kind of a charge are we going to have to put in there? Those are the things we should be really probing and come up with some conclusion. But you can't just go helter skelter and say, oh yeah, well now here this stuff, drink this because I cleaned it up. You can, in fact, be fairly safe if many of these well waters, and there is some good water. Actually, the water that comes from the sky anymore, it is polluted too, because it does contain, frankly, quite a bit of carbon, and some of these carbons are larger in particles because it's soot, and they come back down and they make water acidic. And that's fine up to a certain point, depending on where they fall. But the waters that come from the sky, they are notorious in growing food very quickly because of the nitrogen volume of the atmosphere. They're intimately in contact with this nitrogen, which is in preponderance in our air. So when it falls from the sky in the summertime or any time, as long as the temperature is correct, it will grow food. It will make those plants look green and sing. So rainwater, yes, but to drink rainwater, it's good for the plants, but not necessarily for you. I would not go as far as try to put a label on any of these waters that are not coming from either a spring and having been checked for value and content as to total dissolved solids and exactly what. And you can very with a little checking, you can find out what minerals your system is deficient in. And even the vitamins, you know, when you think about it, the vitamins that you take as a supplement, first they had to be in a solution. In other words, before they could get solid. You dissolve certain substances in there and to collect vitamin C or B or D or any of them.
I've got a
if you're short on those, but drink a well-balanced water, not between 100 and 150 parts, I would recommend. And I do it with an open mind. I could be. No, I have seen that one work over my lifetime. I'm now old enough to actually say it with some certainty.
Well, with your experience, Paul, I have one more question for you. After all your years in doing this, where is the best water you ever found? Just kind of off the cuff. I mean, this is just kind of a curiosity. Did you ever find a spot that was really unusually great?
Well, that one spring in Maine that I just mentioned, that is so unusual. It is very low in TDS. In other words, the total dissolved solids are not removed mechanically, but it is under 50 parts in Maine. But they are scattered throughout the globe. A very equivalent water is at the foot of the Sierras near Sacramento that I've seen. Another one yet at the foot of the Sierra Madre in Mexico. You know, I've seen this phenomenon years ago. Steve used to tell me about. He says, "Well, my boy, as much as I know about this water business, you know, I still don't understand why." And then he's telling me that down in Baja, across from basically Todos Santos on the peninsula, directly across on the Sea of Cortez side, there is a place they refer to as agua caliente, meaning hot water. And he says, that thing has me puzzled. And he told me that, I don't know, 45, 50 years ago. And I listened, and I never thought I'd get to go down there. But I had a job down there to do not far from it. So I went out there and looked, and sure enough, here is this water spritzing out of the side of a mountain out of rock, you know, running down into a pool, practically transparent, hot water. Now, what's going on there? Well, I checked it for total dissolved solids. It was under 100 parts. Theoretically, scientifically, that phenomenon is almost not possible. At that time, I thought the old man is cracking up. That, you know, you can't have hot water and have no minerals in it. Because invariably, the most common mineral associated with hot water is sulfur. You know, obviously, again, pointing to its volcanic origins. And many of these structures, like, for example, the Danube River itself through Eastern Europe, through my homeland, along that course of that fault, all kinds of hot springs bubble up, differing in mineral content, but they all are very high in total dissolved solids. Not that it is bad for you, but I find so far that you know, your system doesn't need that much minerals, because you know, your body, you just have to pass it through, and your body has to work hard in getting rid of these. So, you know, everything in balance. But it absolutely baffled me looking down there, and then it's running into a pool down below at Agua Caliente, and the Mexicans on down there just luxuriating in there. I thought, my God, I'm going to go down there too. And even in that super warm water, something was nibbling on my toes there, and God, there was fish there. Those guys were, that water was, I couldn't stay in the pool too long. I had to get out, but that water, and here's a treasure. Those guys water will cool down for sure, so you can drink it. You don't have to have it hot, or maybe you won't have to heat it so hot. But that is, yeah. But listen, stay away from that distilled water. Anybody sell you a thing like that, you might as well drink vodka. Really, I'm not kidding you. At least you're happier.
There's a question here by one of our guests here.
Sure.
Do artesian well have a primary water?
Say again, please.
It's artesian well have primary water.
Most artesian wells are primary in source, in origin,
Yeah.
because they are the ones that are being forced up from down below. That's how come they maintain their artesian nature. That's why, and a good many part of the major water courses in the United States, even
Yeah.
rivers like John Day River in Oregon, that source is primary in origin. That one is a first magnitude well, spring. Several springs put out hundreds of thousands of gallons of water per minute that run into the Columbia River. Another one too. Another way, yeah. It just goes. That you talk about something that could be harnessed and used for drinking. I mean, we can use other waters for irrigation and stuff. But these are the things. Gotta understand what we have. And another one is a biblical water. You know, at Damascus, Syria. You know, that water there is running, taking care of the city of Damascus. That is a first magnitude spring. It doesn't rain there. Now, where in Sam Hill did all that water come from? Now you were out there in the desert. You wondered, gee whiz, where is this water coming from? And you know, and like in Jordan, those guys fought over the right to own those springs. That was a capital sin to take water without the permission of the owner of that spring or artesian well. You can drill into the ground. Like for example, in Nevada, there's a place that was drilled in the late 50s, early 60s. Now they call it Fly Spring. It is on my website, so there's pictures of it. That's a mineral water now. That comes up and it's now grew into an enormous mound. This guy drilled for water for his ranch, and he ended up hitting water, and that has been flowing ever since. And there are others in eastern Oregon where there isn't much rain. In fact, some places maybe 5-6 inches annually. Yet these first magnitude springs, I just went to one by Summer Lake, and couldn't believe it. This one well that was drilled in the early 60s is putting out over 1,000 gallons of water a minute right to the surface. And there are others in Colorado. Fine, top quality waters. You know, the kids, for example, the kids in Michigan, they don't have to drink lead poisoned water. Are you kidding? I mean, you're no better off than some of these people that, by the virtue of their poverty, because they're in third world countries, they suffer. And we don't in this country, we certainly don't have to do it. We have sources, we have to make locations and drill. Seal off the surface contaminants out of them, establish the kind of water you got. If it says it's a top quality water, my God, use it. You know, I don't have to wait for doomsday in here.
Hey, Paul,
Yeah.
do you ever use dowsers to help you locate the right?
Yeah, of course. I use the stick too as one of the instruments. You bet, it works.
It does, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can practice. You have to practice, and you have to have. I'll bet I drilled near, if not more than 1,000, but pretty close to that many wells over my lifetime. You know, just in Kenya, I'm pretty proud of. In Kenya, I drilled one that was artesian, just as he says. That one I drilled to 300 feet when it solid granite, 300 feet, and it's on record. I mean, it's not. And plus, I have some footage on that. I drilled 300 feet. Boy, it came through solid granite. In the meantime, you know, we were ponding away on this granite. The whole countryside turned white because it was white dust that we were blowing out. And all of a sudden, boom, here she came, right to the top. And it was flowing 50 gallons a minute. And you could see the structure from down below. So I picked the site knowing that I had better than a 50-50 chance of getting artesian flow. So those people wouldn't have to use a pump. Now that they put in a pump, it was running, came right to the surface. and running 50 gallons a minute. So it had to come in under 300 feet. That's 150 pounds of pressure that thing had to come in at that point. And the volume was there too, also. So it was running until they finally get the electricity. Now they can pump it at 600 to 700 gallons a minute, only with the drawdown to 70 feet. So now that whole area is supplying a couple of 2-3 small towns and hospitals and schools. That's the kind of a thing that I don't mind bragging about. That's the kind of a thing that we ought to get our younger people enthused about and say, hey, you can do that too.
I have a question for you. If we were to hire you, let's say your company, to go into Flint, Michigan, and help them with establishing better water through primary wells, how much would it cost for us to send you there and your team?
To where? To where again? I'm sorry, I can hardly hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. You mentioned Flint, Michigan, and
yes,
how the children, shouldn't be drinking rusted water and all that.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so if we sent you and your team to Flint, Michigan, how much would that cost? I mean, if we had people.
Well, I don't want to be evasive, because everybody always asks that. What is it going to cost if we did this and we did that?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I don't have enough information of the area in Flint or anywhere else that is in need of water. And I got to understand, I have to study the geology of it too, enough to say, oh yeah, we got some structures in here. That's why with clients, I always ask for, now it's easier because with the Google, I can get topographic features that shows the delineation of elevation changes, because that tends to spell out where the structure is faulted. So 80% of the time you can pick it off to have somebody actually give you a good map and I got to go out there and take a look. And then you have to make a drilling rig available based on the geology of the place, because I always try to drill into hard rock only, solid rock, not into any kind of a sedimentary alluvium, sand and gravel that is already messed up. If I drill into a hard rock from the get-go and all the other things have to be there, then we have to drill a couple of exploratory holes and find out what water quality is. Because you can have water quality at one place, 100 feet away, you will have water altogether different. Altogether different, because the water on its way up out of magma, it dissolves different minerals, and you'd be surprised, the variance, just absolutely mind-boggling. He insisted on doing one down below. What are they like that? Yeah, we will have water there too. I generally pick out 3 likely sites: number 1, number 2, and number 3, because even doing so, you could have all kinds of mishaps. You could twist off, break off, whatever. Then you have to drill again. I mean, that stuff, is just goes with the turf, as they say. Well, I drilled the first one. We drilled down to 180 feet only and hit water, which I knew the structure was there. My God, I checked the water. First thing I do, not only I check exactly the water quality, roughly, what is it? What is the total dissolved solids? The minute I get any kind of water, I check and see what is it more like, what kind. And this one had more sodium than the Pacific Ocean. And here's this guy out there, he's trying to raise avocados. Avocados, we could have probably done some brine shrimp farm maybe, and I'm not even sure that anything could live in that one, not even brine shrimp. And so those guys said, Paul, please, we have to have water. The crop is gone, can't afford it. They can't afford the water anymore from the utility company. my God, they fixed it so that these guys drill a gallon or two over the allotment, and they get penalized. Anyway, money was, don't worry about the money. Do whatever you have to do. We got to have water. Well, I said, okay, now we're going to go to that site there that looks good. That is really was my first choice. And they know what to. I hope they're listening one more time. They would bear me up. I had to drill on that. I said, but we're going to have to go deep. This is not going to be a cheap well. We have to go down. And I really was sweating it down to 180 feet because that's only 100 feet away. It was a parallel fault, 100 feet away the salt. So I thought, God, you know, if that thing is directly tied to that one, these guys, I don't have, you know, we will have wasted their time and money and everything. So I drilled to 180 feet. Much to my relief, there was nothing, just dry. Okay, then I knew I'd have to go at least 900 feet. So I told him, I said, listen, guys, this is going to cost you, I don't know what the driller was charging him because I'm not party to bidding the project itself. I'm just there to make sure that water is delivered and estimate. So we drilled down 900 feet. You know, we ended up hitting 300 gallons a minute water of excellent quality. Nothing in the whole neighborhood like that. 100 feet away. The water was around 150 parts. Imagine that. Just 100 feet away. Yes, are they connected? Yes, they are both water. But that's where the similarity ends. See, everything is made down below. On its way up, this hot steam, what does it come in contact with? You know, there could have been a pocket of sodium deposit from the time, who knows when the heck that was deposited in there. You can't tell that in advance. But going to that, you need to set up a project, and you have some basic costs you have to bear. Go out there, check it. And drill a couple of 3 test holes. First of all, pick out likely sites from the maps. I don't even go out if the place looks hopeless or out of reach for whatever reason, don't even bother. But if it looks halfway good, then I'd say, okay, then I go out there and take a look. It doesn't matter whether it's in the Marshall Islands because I've been out there too. So you go out there, then establish the fact that it is there, where it is, how many roughly, then you get a drilling rig there and check it out. That was just 6 inches. Again, we have a bad connection. It says in mine here. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're getting through there. We can hear a little bit. Every once in a while, it'll break up, but you're getting the message across there.
But anyway.